Hello and welcome to episode 73 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. I'm Sarah Says, and with Rick in Ireland doing a 620-mile pilgrimage on the Ireland Way, I am taking over the hosting duties for this episode, as we do something a little different. Today we are going to do a best of episode, where we take a look back on some interviews and moments that you may have missed if you are new to the podcast. As I mentioned, Rick is walking the Ireland Way. Let's hear from him quickly as he tells us about his fundraising goals on the trip.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm out on the trail in Ireland, putting in the work to go 620 miles on the Ireland Way. I'm doing this to raise money and awareness for victims and survivors of domestic violence. We've teamed up with CASA of Pinellas County in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. Every dollar we raise will be going to help CASA in their ongoing work to help those who have suffered from abuse. There are no processing fees, and the money goes directly to CASA even when I'm on the trail. As someone who grew up in an abusive household, this cause is very, very important to me. Please donate casapinellas.org/walkwithrick/ that is casapinellas.org/walkwithrick/. The link can also be found in the YouTube description. We're going to show the world that adults who like theme parks aren't as bad as they make us sound. We rally to help those in need. Now, back to you, Sarah Says.
Back on March 3rd, Rick talked with Instagram influencer, the Sarah Enigma. She has tried to share her story as someone living with chronic illness who also happens to be a huge Disney and Harry Potter fan. This is from their conversation from episode 57.
Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So I learned about you from your Instagram page, the Sarah Enigma, and you have some really just, I would say, positive influence that you like to put out on the internet. Why don't you go into a little description about what you do on your Instagram page and some of that positivity that you like to put into the world?
Well, I have been diagnosed with multiple chronic illnesses, and that was a big change for me. And I just decided that someone should know what it's like to have a chronic illness. So I've been posting about that and what it is to have a chronic illness and all the experiences that go along with that, but also like how to travel with chronic illness and showing that you can still live your life. Also, I do recipes that I follow my diet for, and lots of book reviews, and of course, tons and tons of Disney content.
So as somebody who is very physically active, I run marathons, I do a lot of hiking, and even for me, a day at Walt Disney World or at Universal Orlando Resort can just be so taxing. And one of the things that I love about your content is you go over how to do these theme parks that are so stressful for somebody who maybe can't handle as much as some other people.
Yeah, it's very interesting. In my family, I have lots of chronic illness, but my mom is also physically disabled. Like, she can walk, but as you said, the parks are massive. So we always get her a wheelchair so that we can do the parks together. But it's just it's cliche, but Disney's so magical, right? And there's just so much about it that the three of us can enjoy, and it takes away a lot of the stress of vacations, because I can eat things and I can do things, and my mom can do a lot of things, and there's just something so perfect about it. You can forget that life is hard and that you can just enjoy while we're there, and it's just so great. And yes, a lot of planning goes into it. We have pages and pages of things, and we have safe food places, and we make sure we have rests, and obviously we can't do everything in one day. But there's just something, it's so freeing to be able to go to a park that allows people with disabilities to flourish.
As a vegetarian, I really like how Walt Disney World and even Universal can specialize in making sure there are a lot of options for me. As somebody who has a dietary limitation, even though mine is chosen, but does that help? I know I have a friend who has a gluten allergy, and he is like, I will always go to Walt Disney World, even if I don't care about the rides, because of how much they make sure that they can follow my diet. And the chefs will come out and talk to people if they have any particular issues. Do you find that to be the case when you're there?
I have heard of that, and like I had a good time being able to like look beforehand to see if there's anything I could eat because the menus are very accessible online, and they also have allergy friendly menus. For myself, the past couple times we've been there, I've been on a very strict diet and have a lot of allergies, so I actually have only been able to eat sorbet. um, so for me, it's been a little bit more difficult for that. But gosh, is that sorbet good? Like I love it so much, and to actually be able to have a treat that's amazing. But in that way, our vacations are very different too because I have to pack my food and bring it in. I hope that one day, maybe the next time we go, I'll be able to interact more with the food, but in that way we actually save a lot of time, our family, because we have our little packed lunch and we eat it in rides, on lines for rides. So yeah, but they are very accommodating. I really love that, like I do bring in a little like a foldable cooler in my backpack, and I've never once been stopped in Universal or Disney for bringing in that cooler. And like I have my letter from my doctor being like, I have allergies, but I've never had to bring it out, and it's been very nice.
One of the women who's on the show a lot is Marissa from Chicago, and she actually has an issue where she needs to get a DAS pass, an accessibility pass. And looking at her, nobody would suspect that she needs the DAS pass. And I know there's a lot of negativity that goes around the internet, and people will watch people using the DAS passes and maybe judge them. And if somebody were to look at you, they wouldn't necessarily assume that you needed something like that either. So I think this is a prime example to remind people that you have no idea what somebody else is going through when they're at these theme parks. And just because somebody looks young and healthy doesn't mean that they shouldn't have a DAS pass. And I think you're a prime example of that. And I love that Disney and Universal make sure that everybody can enjoy these parks. I think Universal maybe could be a little better with bigger people. But besides that, these theme parks try to be accommodating to everybody. Now, I want to move on to something else that you do that I think would interest a lot of people who listen to the show. And you are a huge Disney bounder. You come up with some of the most incredible Disney bounds for your page, the Sarah Enigma on Instagram. So why don't you talk about how you got into that and what inspires you to come up with a new outfit?
I don't actually remember exactly where I learned of Disney bounding. I think my sister stumbled upon Leslie Kay, who started Disney bounding, and she's like, "Hey, this will be fun." And I had just gotten my medical leave from school, so I was like, "Yeah, I can do this. This will be something fun." Yeah, not only was it fun to think of new outfits all the time, but it's a really good bonding time for my sister and I because I'm really bad at taking selfies, so she has to take the pictures for me. But it's very fun, and we sometimes do challenges. And for a while, we watch a Disney movie every week, and so I would time the Disney bounds to the movie of that week. And I don't know, there's just something satisfying about being able to do it for me. It shows that there's still things I can do. And some days I'm too tired. I can only do one a day, and then I have to rest for the rest of the day. But there's just putting it out there and people commenting on it and saying, "Oh, this is cool," or just even liking it. And I know it's kind of shallow, but it's like validation of being like, "Hey, cool, I'm still here. Like this is great." And it's very fun. I also pillaged my mother and my sister's closets, so I have three wardrobes to pull out of. So sometimes there's a very odd character, and I'm like, I don't have anything like this. My sister's like, here, take this one, and I'm like, perfect. It's just something fun and creative, and it's not too taxing to be creative, which is really nice.
And for somebody just because of geography who can't get to the parks as much as I'm sure you would like to be at the parks, it has to be a way to bring Disney into your life at home. And I think that's something that a lot of people, of course, I would say, listen to us here on this show. They're trying to bring Disney into their everyday life. And you have found this creative outlet for it. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, and like you don't even have to post it anywhere if you want. Like I sometimes I go to an appointment and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna casually Disney Bound Mickey Mouse today, and I just go off at it, and no one knows, but it's fun, right? And it's just brings a little spark of joy. It's just something to be like, yeah, I'm Disney, and this is who I am, and Disney today is gonna be awesome, and it's so much fun.
And that's one of the things that really drew me to your Instagram account is that you are so positive. On the internet, it can be so negative, and you can just be bogged down with all the controversies and all the drama. But sometimes to have somebody just say, you know what, we all love this thing. We all love Disney, and let's just celebrate what we love about it without maybe nitpicking how long it's taking for them to build a new ride or something like that, because deep down, we all love these movies and these characters and these theme parks, and let's celebrate that.
I don't know, Disney's captured the magic so perfectly. Like it's so universal, right? And it doesn't matter. Like I loved them growing up, the movies, and sometimes I love them even more now. Like there's just things when you're in your life that happen when you watch a Disney movie and you're like, oh, this is so profound to me. And, and then you're like, it doesn't matter what age I am. I don't have to be a 4 year old. I don't have to be a 10-year-old. Like I can be as old as I want and still love Disney. And I think that's what's great about the Disney bounding community as well, is that you can look and see a lot of people from all acts of life and ages, and they're still enjoying it, and we're not judging them for enjoying it, which is very nice.
Sometimes people talk about the Disney adults and it gets such a bad name, and I think that you are one of those examples of somebody who shows, you know what, we're not all of these negative stereotypes that people put on us. Now, you are also a gigantic Harry Potter fan.
Yes.
And as somebody who likes to read as much as you like to read, and we'll get into that a little bit later, how did you get into the Harry Potter books? How did you get into the movies? And then, of course, what was it like the first time you got to experience these books and movies that you loved through the theme park lands at Universal?
Well, firstly, I have to say I'm a twin, and we have when we were younger, very similar reading styles. And she's gonna hate me, but I'm throwing her under the bus. She read Harry Potter first and hated it when we were in like grade 4, and she's like, "Don't read it; it's terrible." And I was like, "Okay," so I never read it. So my friend was obsessed with it, and she finally got us to watch the movies when we were in high school. And then I was like, "Hang on, this is really cool." And my sister was like, "I think I might have been wrong." So then we started reading the books, and gosh, they're just so amazing. And like, disclaimer, I don't agree with all her opinions, the author. But the books, there is just something so like encompassing of them, right? And you get into this world, and it was just fantastic. So I'm a little bit different because I didn't actually get to grow up with them. All of the movies were out when I watched them all, and all the books were out, of course. So I did them in what I consider backwards order because I watched the movies first. But yeah, that's how I got into it, and I've reread them several times since.
And what was it like to finally see those situations brought to life at Universal? I know I've seen pictures of you in front of Hogwarts Castle, and that must have been such an incredible experience because as somebody who's not a Harry Potter fan, I love those theme park lands, but they don't connect with me like they do to people who are so invested in the books and the movies.
Yeah, so the first time I went was 2010. We were kind of into it at that point, and I don't know, I was having a day. So we walked up and we saw Grimwald Place, and Creature was there, and I burst into tears, and I was like, "This is awesome! Thank you so much, Mom and Dad, for bringing me. This has been the best thing." And they're all kind of looking at me funny, and they're like, "Do you want to go see the rest?" And I was like, "There's more?" And so then we walked to the gate, and I was like flabbergasted because I didn't realize that there was like a whole Diagon Alley part and everything, and it just so that I know it's kind of funny, but it's a really good memory because it was just like the shock that there was something behind the wall and there was more there was just absolutely thrilling. And when my sister and I went the last time we went, the second time, there was just even it was just even more fun because we were older and we could like do it on our own, and we didn't care what people thought, and we were just having a blast. And yeah, standing in front of the castle, like the castle's really cool, right? Like it really looks like you're going to Hogwarts. And it really felt like it was burning hot that day. But the snow in Hogsmeade, I kept thinking I was there at Christmas. And then I'd be like, oh wait, I'm sweating. I don't sweat when it's snowy outside. But it felt so real. Yeah, it was like stepping into a different time, and like I really could believe that we were wizards. And it's just, yeah, there's something so cool about seeing the page and screen come to life, like in real life, because it looks exactly like the movies, and it's incredible.
So we have a regular on the show, Marissa from Chicago. She's also a very big Harry Potter fan, and she reads a ton. You are probably the only person in the world I know who reads more than Marissa reads. You are always giving reviews of new books that you've read. You're always making suggestions. First of all, maybe if you could talk about some books you've read recently that you would like to recommend to people. But what types of books really attract you to them? What do you like to read? If somebody is an avid reader and they want to follow you, what types of suggestions are they going to get?
You're going to get a lot of World War One and World War Two historical fiction, because I latched onto that in high school. I've never let go. You're going to get some fantasy, and there is quite a bit of YA fantasy as well, because I like the mix of the protagonists, but also different worlds. They just do it so well. Yeah, there's a couple true fantasy books, and those ones I space out because they're usually very long. And yeah, and then I have a book club, so those are the ones that usually get thrown in, that you look at it and be like, she's reading that, and I was like, yes, I am, because I'm trying to broaden my perspectives. But lately, it's actually the first book I read this year is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn, and it's hefty, but man, was it fantastic. And I try not to read too late into the evening because I need my sleep, but I lost sleep on that book because it was just so good. And it's about the woman at Bletchley Circle during World War II. It's just absolutely fascinating, and you just want to know how it ends. So I think I ate through that in like 3 days, which is incredible considering how long it is. I just started rereading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Those, what else can you say? They're awesome. The book club book we just read, I actually loved. It was The Mexican Gothic. I don't remember the author's name.
Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
I don't tend to read more scary horror books because I have a very overreactive imagination, but this one was so fantastic. And if you like plant horror, it's just so good. So I would definitely recommend that one. And I think it was popular last year, but it's still definitely worth a read.
So I don't want to get too deep, but having you on and hearing your personality, and you love a lot of the things that all of us love. You love Disney, Universal, Harry Potter, reading. What would you like people to know about people living with chronic illness that they might not know? What do you want to get across both with your blog and your Instagram page? I know you like to put positivity out there, but you're probably also trying to let people know the type of life you can lead even while you're going through this.
Yeah, there's a fine line, and I sometimes struggle with it because I want to be honest with people, and I want to show that you can be positive, but there's some days that aren't positive. And I know everyone has that. So lately I've been trying to show a little bit more through my blog that not everything is positive. And I think for me, going through chronic illness, the hardest part is that I will never get better. I might be better than I am today, but I will never be cured. And I think a lot of people don't understand that once you have a chronic illness, it is for life. But I also find it hard is people, I'll like go for a walk one day and I'll meet a neighbor and they're like, oh, you're going for a walk, you must be feeling better. And you're like, I'm not, but I decided to go for a walk today. And some days I can go for 40 minutes and some days I can't even get off the couch. So there really is a fluctuation in chronic illness that some days are good and some days are very bad. And I think that people don't always realize that, especially with social media, right? Like when I have the energy, I post cool pictures or I post content. And some days I just can't. And I like use my scheduler very often because some days I just don't have the energy. But like An example was yesterday, I slept for 18 hours yesterday. And today I was able to be awake for more than I was asleep. So it really depends on the day. And I think that's what's hard for people to grasp if you don't live with someone, is sometimes even from hour to hour, it can change dramatically. And that's hard. But you keep going, and I think for me, the reason I keep going is my family, and having a good support system makes a ginormous difference to people with chronic illness.
Is not always being positive about your chronic illness a way of actually being positive, of showing people this is what all of us are going through? If somebody follows you who has chronic illness themselves and they see you're posting Disney bounds and you have these little photo shoots and you're posting pictures inside the theme parks when you can be there, and they're thinking, I'm not living that life, but if they read your blog, they can see it's okay. It's okay if I sleep 18 hours today. It's okay if the best I can do is walk around the block. Is it almost positivity through not negativity, but realism?
Yeah, I think so. My family's had a lot of conversations about this, because it's hard even for me if I follow a chronic illness Instagrammer or influencer and they're too positive. Like there's almost a too positive, right? Where they're like, "Oh, this will not define me, and I'll go even though this hurts me, I'll do this thing." And I just think sometimes that's harmful. And then for me, it feels more isolating that even people with chronic illness don't understand. So I think you're right. I think by me being not positive all the time, or showing that there is sometimes real darkness, I think does help people, because it shows them that, hey, it's okay to have real darkness and it's normal, especially with what you're all going through. And I do hope that what I post and talk about can show people that not only to normalize that there's darkness and ups and downs, but to be like, it's okay to have that. And that's what my hope with, especially my blog, will be. And yeah, Instagram, I just hope that you can also see the happy side of things as well.
So before I just ask you some completely Disney specific questions, why don't you tell people where they can find your blog? Because I think it is definitely something I want a whole bunch of people to read, whether you have chronic illness, whether somebody you know or love has chronic illness, or if you're just trying to understand other people. That's what we're all kind of trying to do in this world. So how can they read your blog, check out your Instagram page?
My blog is the sarahenigma.wordpress.com, and my Instagram handle is the Sarah Enigma. I try to keep it consistent.
Okay, so now let's just get into some of the fun. What is your favorite Disney movie of all time?
Well, that one's easy. It's Mary Poppins.
That is easy because it is the only correct answer, so I agree with you on that one.
Great.
How about your favorite Disney animated movie of all time?
The Little Mermaid. That's a hard choice. It sometimes fluctuates because there's just so many.
Then at the parks, what's your favorite ride at Magic Kingdom?
That's almost like picking children, but I would have to say Under the Sea, The Journey with the Little Mermaid. That one, I think it's probably because it's my favorite animated movie, but it's just so great.
That ride was such a great way of Disney doing something new that feels classic Disney. It feels like one of those old dark rides that we would have gotten in the 80s, but they did it brand new. It usually doesn't have that long of a line, and it has a fantastic queue.
Oh, totally. I've always liked like Winnie the Pooh and Peter Pan, so when The Little Mermaid came out, it was just like, oh, this is great. It's like 10 times longer and it's the same style, which is just so awesome.
And it's important to have rides like that because everything doesn't have to be an e-ticket roller coaster. So what about your favorite ride at Epcot?
That would be Frozen Ever After for me.
Okay, Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Toy Story Mania would be my favorite.
Yeah, that's always a fun one. Are you good at it or do you just like it?
To be not modest, I'm the best in my family. But it's just very fun. Yeah.
And over to Disney's Animal Kingdom, what's your favorite ride over there?
Expedition Everest would be my favorite. Yeah.
Oh, you went with the thrill ride last. That's interesting. I thought that maybe you didn't do a lot of thrill rides, but then you go with Expedition Everest to wrap it up.
Yeah.
The Sarah Enigma, it has been so fun talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic.
All the way back in episode 29 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty, in August of last year, Rick talked with Steven from the YouTube channel A Life in the Parks. Steven goes through old videos from the theme parks and puts that content up on YouTube as a sort of time capsule on the parks. Take it away, Rick.
It's time to get things started with Steven, who's connecting with us from the United Kingdom. How are you doing today, Steven?
I'm very well, Rick. And you?
I am doing excellent. I absolutely love following your YouTube channel, A Life in the Parks. And I just wanted to have this opportunity to talk about it. And I know that my listeners would also love to check out some of these videos. So first, why don't you describe to somebody who hasn't visited your site what you do on your site and why it's so unique?
I think to start off with, it's that whole history of the theme parks and how they've changed over the years. Like, I was quite lucky that I first went to Orlando in 1985. We had a great family trip and just fell in love with the place. And then sort of 4 years later, it was my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. MGM Studios had just opened and we went there and it was just fabulous. My mum's boss had said to us, I've got this camcorder, and you can imagine it. It was like a brick, like my dad was dragging around and recording sort of our time at Disney. So, my channel is basically from that trip in 1989, then sort of fast forward a few years when I went as an adult. And really it's from the millennium and all those sort of celebrations right the way sort of the next sort of 10 years. And I've got about 80 videos up so far of not just Orlando, there's California as well, videos from there. And I've probably got about another 40 sort of old retro videos still to add on my site.
The time frame that you're talking about is very interesting because that's almost exactly the time frame for me. I went my first time, I think it was 1985, 1986. I was a very, very small child. And then I went pretty consistently through 1993, so I got the very beginning of MGM Studios as well, and then I had a little bit of a gap until I became an adult, much like you. So we have a similar timeline into our love of Walt Disney World and our love of these theme parks. So as you're going through these old videos and you look at some of the changes that have happened to the parks, what are some of the things that you really miss the most?
Bizarrely, it's things like walking around World Showcase and it not being a food festival the whole time. Like, it's unbelievable. Wouldn't you just want to go round there and it just be normal? And I put a video up not that long ago, and it's like, it's so changed, that park, over the last few years. You look at MGM Studios. Now, I've got a video that will be coming out shortly in which the backlot tour did the whole Catastrophe Canyon, and then it comes up the streets of America, and well, that didn't do that hasn't done that for a long time, and it was a movie studio. You felt there, and I think when we went the first time, they were doing like Turner and Hooch and things like that, and you could see all the costumes, and you really felt that whole sort of, I'm here and I'm seeing how it's going to be made. I'm from the UK, there's a big history of movie here, but it's not really like it is in the States, where there was just that sort of that excitement that we had. And obviously the Magic Kingdom hasn't changed as much, but yeah, there's been some changes there. I think the other thing is that how the development of things like the parades, like you had these. At one point in the early 2000s, all 4 parks had parades. It was just a very special time. And I kind of miss that. Maybe that more will come back after the pandemic's over. But it was that MGM, they were changing their parades every couple of years for a while. And I miss that sort of that live sort of interactions that made Disney different to other theme parks.
So as we talk about that original MGM Studios and when that park first opened and some of the things that would seem so weird to somebody now who knows Hollywood Studios but didn't know MGM, and I'm thinking of two things in particular that were huge at MGM Studios at the beginning that barely get talked about at Disney at all anymore, and that's Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Dick Tracy. Remember how big Dick Tracy was?
I knew you were going to say Roger Rabbit. That is what that whole character is just. I actually watched somebody else's video. I watch a lot of other people's retro videos, and it was a parade. And so in the Magic Kingdom, and Roger Rabbit is the first character out of the box, and you're thinking, wow, when was the last? I don't remember the last time. And Dick Tracy, exactly the same. That film was huge.
It was everywhere, and then it was nowhere. Both of those movies, everywhere and then nowhere all of a sudden. There are still some references to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think there are actually 5 references to the movie scattered throughout Walt Disney World.
Oh, wow.
There's the Maroon Cartoons billboard in Hollywood Studios still. Above Hollywood and Vine Restaurant in Hollywood Studios, there's Eddie Valiant's office, and there's an outline of Roger Rabbit busting through the blinds. At Pop Century Resort, there's the big Roger Rabbit. In casting, there is a statue of Roger Rabbit, which not a lot of us see, but I've been told by CMs that exists. And his footprints are also at Hollywood Studios.
Love it.
So that's a little bit of an interesting bit of trivia on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but Dick Tracy has been gone. I think they do have the movie on Disney Plus now, but that's about it. That's like the only reference they have to it anymore. And it was everywhere. So if you took a gap after those first few years of MGM Studios and didn't go back until you were an adult, is that when you first got to experience Disney's Animal Kingdom?
Yeah, what happened is that during the 90s, life got in the way. I went to college, I met my partner, we bought a house. I wanted to go back in 98 for the opening of Animal Kingdom, but we just couldn't save up enough money. And then, yeah, in 2000, it was, let's go back. And the VHS tape that my dad had, we had watched that to death. There's no YouTube. There was no way of actually seeing like theme park footage. My other half, she didn't want to go at all. I cannot. And look at her now is completely different. And she loves it. But I said, I want to go on vacation. I want to go to Orlando for 2 weeks, and we go to theme parks. She must have thought I was nuts, and it was such a hard sell. They say, can we go for a week? And it's like, not really. There's so many theme parks there. We also want to go to Kennedy Space Center. We want to go to Busch Gardens and sort of the beaches. And there's so much sort of going on. Nowadays, when people say they're going to go there for 2 weeks and they say, can I do it all? And you're thinking, you can't do it all in 2 weeks anymore. That's completely changed. And I think that for British tourists, there was a time when it was this whole, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's a lot of money to go to the States at the best of times. And people go there and they get bitten by this bug. And it's amazing to see how that has grown. Because when I was going in the 80s as a kid, no one, I was the first person, luckily through my dad's job, they had a big social club and we managed to go. And even sort of in the early 2000s, it had just started to become that much more popular. You were seeing more sort of, Brits turning up. But yeah, it was that dream sort of destination for us.
That was a portion of Rick Doherty's interview with Stephen from the YouTube channel, A Life in the Parks. For more of that conversation, you can check out episode 29. For Stephen from A Life in the Parks, Sarah Enigma, and Rick Doherty. I'm Sarah Says, and this has been episode 73 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We will be back with another brand new episode next Thursday, which will actually be Rick's birthday. Please please consider donating in honor of his efforts on the Ireland Way as a way to celebrate his birthday. There is a link in the description on YouTube and a pinned tweet on both Twitter pages at Rick_ear and at TGTT Podcast. Until then, have a great week.